policy to this. Oh, okay. Yeah. I can get that. I can get that to the closing agent, and then he'll make a call.
I did, ran a few lights.
They don't. That's the thing.
Who's Amy Mitchell?
She's
Which
the
one?
charge director.
Yeah, okay. Okay. Airport.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and now would be the time now.
Absolutely.
I guess that's.
Yeah. And I think you can on that. I think that you can. Special.
Well, currently.
Special. And then.
I appreciate it. So, I suppose this is,
That's how you do it.
this is the property that, no, I didn't put it on, yes, I'll say it for the day. Wanted, included. I think it was,
Housing. Just showed
Yeah.
up. You know,
I hear them about doing that.
They get
And I picked most of them. And then it's out there for 7 days. Call you up in the morning.
Chief?
Afternoon.
Well, how are you today? Is that what that is? Oh,
Here we are.
I need
Oh,
extra.
we running in here.
Good to see you. Scrubs. This morning. How you doing? Me too.
No
phone.
trouble, so I came to the wrong meeting.
Yeah, he was talking about, I think this, he wants to try to have that, try to buy it without affordable housing restrictions. Same thing Dick was talking about the whole while.
I'd like to call the April the 5th, 2021 meeting of the City Council for the City of Lake City to order. If everyone would stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, remain standing for the invocation.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let us pray. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for many blessings that you bestow upon us and holiday we just enjoyed. And we ask that you to look over our community to guide us in our deliberations, that what we do is best for our community and pleasing in your eyes. We ask that you continue to protect us during this pandemic, and hopefully we're getting closer to an end, and look after our first responders, our troops, and our citizens. In your name we pray. Amen. Ms. Ox, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Sampson,
Here.
Mr. Green.
Here.
Mr. Hill.
Here.
Mr. Jefferson.
Here.
Mayor Witt,
Here.
Mr. Coberline,
Here.
Mr. Helpenberger,
Here.
Chief Gilmore.
Okay, we have a couple of proclamations. The first one is National Public Safety Telecommunications Week, April the 11th through the 17th. Whereas emergencies can occur at any time that require law enforcement, fire, or emergency medical services, And whereas public safety telecommunicators are the first contacts our residents have with emergency services, and whereas these unseen first responders provide an essential service to the community and to police and emergency personnel with compassion and understanding and professionalism. And whereas public safety agencies nationwide celebrate how important public safety telecommunicators are in providing support to law enforcement, fire services, emergency medical services, and other governmental field personnel. Whereas in 1991, Congress proclaimed the second week of April as nationally noted week of recognition dedicated to the men and women who serve as public safety telecommunicators. And whereas Lake City wishes to recognize our public safety telecommunicators for their commitment to performing their duties with integrity and accountability and respect at the highest level of customer service. Now, therefore, I, Stephen M. Witt, Mayor of the City of Lake City, do hereby proclaim April the 11th through the 17th, 2021 as National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week. And the City of Lake City do hereby recognize the Lake City Public Safety Telecommunicators for their outstanding service and commitment to the citizens of Lake City and Columbia County. Do we have any of our telecommunicators here with us? Okay. Okay, the next one we have is Water Conservation Month, April 2021. Whereas water is a basic and essential need of every living creature, whereas the state of Florida Water Management Districts and the City of Lake City Utilities are working together to increase awareness about the importance of water conservation. And whereas the City of Lake City and the state of Florida have designated April typically a dry month when water demands are most acute, Florida's Water Conservation Month to educate citizens about how they can help save Florida's precious water resources. And whereas the City of Lake City Utilities has always encouraged and supported water conservation through various educational programs and special events. And whereas every business, industry, school, and citizen can make a difference when it comes to conserving water, whereas every business, industry, school, and citizen can help by saving water and thus promote a healthy economy and community. Now, therefore, I, Stephen M. Witt, Mayor of the City of Lake City, Florida, do hereby proclaim April as Water Conservation Month and urge each citizen and business to help protect our precious resource by practicing water saving measures and becoming more aware of the need to save water. I think we have Mr. Mike Osborne here that wanted to speak.
My name is Mike Osborne, I'm the Director at the Water Treatment Plant. I want to speak a little bit about water conservation. I'm not sure if people are aware that out of all the water on Earth, only 1% of this water is actually fresh water that is able to be consumed. Conserving water is extremely important. Lake City this year is going to be doing an all-out water conservation the best that we can. The AWWA studies have shown that actually only 2% of the water that we produce at our water treatment plant is actually consumed by our customers. The rest of it is actually just used for waste, for lawn watering, car washing, bathing, stuff like that. So it's important that we conserve as much water as we can, because if you look at it, we produced 124 billion gallons of water last year at the Lake City Water Treatment Plant. So if you take the percentage, only 25 million gallons of that was actually consumed by customers. The rest of it went to waste. Single-family homes typically use the most water of any utility customer in the sector. Community water systems are regulated on their use of water, and we are trying to promote water conservation that so stricter regulations are not imposed on individuals themselves. In this effort, I'd like to invite any civic groups, schools, or even individuals to contact us and come do a plant tour. We are scheduled Mondays and Fridays all month long, 10 o'clock for plant tours. However, we do require you call ahead and give us a number so we can make sure that we have suitable distancing in our building when we do the tours. We will give you a tour of the overview of the plant and how we produce the water, along with what testing we do to ensure that you receive the highest quality product from us as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next is approval of the agenda, and I have one amendment, which would be, I guess, for under old business, it would be a discussion of our past motions on Lusty Park, and I wanted to bring that up earlier in the meeting and take care of that. So that would be with that amendment. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So move, Mayor.
Second.
Motion and second to approve the agenda is amended. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, next is approval of the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So move, Mr. Mayor. Second.
Motion and second to approve the consent agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, at this time, I'd call on Mr. Helfenberger, who wants to do some introductions.
Okay, I'd like to ask Ms. Grow and Ms. Mitchell to stand up. Okay. I'd like to please welcome Ms. Grow as our new airport manager, and also welcome Ms. Mitchell as our new HR resources director. Both of them start, their first day is today. So Ms. Stroh has worked for Fort Lauderdale Executive Airport for the past 20 years. And prior to that, the Greater Orlando Aviation Authority. Is a specialist in noise abatement. She was assistant airport manager 2014 and 15 for the Fort Lauderdale Airport. Ms. Mitchell is most recently accounts manager for staff management. During her tenure, she prior to that, she was the HR manager for the Urban League of Greater Miami, 2012 to 2017, and coordinated services of recruiting, staffing, interviewing, evaluating, background investigations, wage compensation, health benefits, mandatory training, safety and health, and succession planning. She also owned her own company through 2010 through 2017, Powering Independence, where she did also coordinate HR services, implement labor laws, and assisted individuals with disabilities. Did that during her weekends and after hours. She also has an MBA degree from St. Louis University. So please welcome both of these managers. Thank you. Okay. Okay. First of all, Mr. Stroh, would you please stand up? Is your new airport director? Airport manager. Okay. And then Ms. Mitchell, would you please stand up? And she's our new HR director.
Okay, thank you. At this time, we have persons wishing to address council. I have a few, and I'd ask everybody to keep in mind, we have a 3-minute limit, and please be respectful of others. And we will begin with Victoria Coker and Logan Wright.
Good evening. My name is Victoria Coker, 636 Southeast Bay Drive, Lake City, and this is my peer, Logan Wright. Thank you for allowing me to speak. On behalf of the Ambassador Leadership Council, we want to make you aware and invite your participation in the annual celebration of youth leadership. We would like to invite you to participate and really encourage your presence at the event. On April 18th from 11 to 2 p.m., we will be at the Wilson Park for the Youth Arts and Entrepreneurial Showcase. On April 21st, businesses will have a showcase of intern opportunities. This event will be held at the Lake City Armory from 2 to 4 p.m. And students get to work with Mr. Koberline to put on a parliamentary competition. Thank you, Mr. Koberline. On April 22nd from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. at the Blanche Hotel, this event will allow On April 22nd from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. at the Blanche Hotel, we will have a Youth Leadership Awards banquet. This event will recognize young leaders from our community, and we encourage your attendance. Finally, and something I am looking forward to, is the History Hunt. This event will allow the community to participate in a scavenger hunt. Historical depictions will share Lake City's history in a fun-filled activity of learning. Logan is now handing out invitations and flyers.
Thank you. Very much.
Okay, thank y'all very much. Next is Robbie Hollingsworth.
It's kind of strange being on this side of this, but here I am. I came here to explain in my words what happened in the meeting the other day. You know, I wasn't a commissioner when all this came about. I was campaigning, and you know how a campaign is, you don't pay as much attention as you should. But I think it was August 10th this came up. Is that right? August 10th, 2020. I got elected, I think, or took office in November. So, you know, but all along I'd heard that y'all wanted to park, that the city wanted to park. I'd heard it through friends, people, you know, around. I probably never asked the mayor or anybody directly, but in that time. So when we went to vote last week, I saw it as a procedural vote. I thought that everybody was on board. And if you watch the meeting, you can see that, you know, I'm not going to speak for anyone else, but it sounded like, you know, everything wasn't a real big deal. Well, during that discussion, it came to pass that somebody asked David, they said, well, has the city given their opinion on what they want to do? Do they want the park? Well, his words, Mr. Helfenberger, he contacted Mr. Helfenberger, and Mr. Helfenberger said that the city had no position. And you can see where I would be very shocked by that. I really couldn't believe it, and it didn't really make a lot of sense to me. But essentially that changed my vote, because I'm not going to give something to a board or anyone else that isn't sure if they want it or not. I expected the words we wanted, you know, because of all the things I'd heard. And today I'm here for the truth. I'm here to hear what you really want. And I'm open to what you want, because, and if you look at the paper last Saturday, they interviewed me on Friday sometime. And they said, how do you feel about it? Well, in the newspaper, I said my feelings. I said, I do not believe that we should take it from the city. I don't think it's right. And today I still don't think it's right. But with the new information we had, I made a different decision than I was going to make. Well, doing the right thing And that comes along with the fact that y'all spent millions of dollars, you know, taking care of that place, fixing it up for county and city residents. And I just don't believe that because of some glitch 100 years ago, that y'all ought to have to give up all of that equity you have in that park. It's about doing the right thing and not the wrong thing. And if I were in your shoes, I try to put myself in other people's shoes. And if I were in your shoes, and let's say that the baseball complex we have, in fact, y'all gave us some of that, but let's say we found out you own that baseball complex with all the improvements we had. We would want it back. It would be very clear that we want it back. And I think anybody knows that we would want it back. And I don't blame you guys for wanting it back if that's the case. So, and one thing I will say, if you give me 2 more seconds, okay? From now on, when I have an issue with the city and we're having an issue like this, probably won't ever happen again, but I will not depend on my county manager and I won't depend on the city manager to fill me in. I will come to you personally and I'll sit down with you and ask you and find out what the situation is so that I'm more educated on what's going on. So I appreciate y'all letting me come today, and I'm for you having the park as I have been since, you know, before. I think that you should have it, and it's not right for us to take it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, I just got one from Sylvester Warren.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Sylvester Warren. I just want to piggyback on Mr. Hollingsworth. Mr. Hollingsworth admitted 2 meetings ago, and he's now before the council line as to why he voted the way he voted. He agreed. Everybody knows the history of this park situation. We spent $10,000 because they asked us to prove, when we asked them to quit claim them, us the title to any interest they may have. They chose not to and said, prove to us you own it. And once you do it, we'll give it to you. No strings attached. You don't have to be there. Not about what Joe say, not about what David say. None of that was a part of it. None of that was a part of it. And the right thing for the commissioners to have done was to give us what they promised they would do. Nothing shouldn't have changed their mind. Nothing about the city position changed. They could have went at the August the 10th meetings. The city would have not spent that money if they did not want the park. Everything on the city's behalf demonstrated and proved that we wanted the Olusty Park. We want to spend millions in it. We wouldn't maintain it if we didn't want it. We were told it that we did not want it, and we wouldn't have invested money in it. And so they're very disingenuous, and it has been, I'm not of the opinion that some of the commissioners cannot be trusted when they say things. And if I was the city council, I would be extremely careful moving forward in any partnership and relationship with those guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. We have one more. Valerie Roebuck.
Good evening. I don't know if a lot of people are aware about the situation that took place with all this shooting last night. But CK, we try to get some kind of gun control law or something going on in Lake City because innocent people losing their life because of other people having scores to settle with each other.
Were you waiting on? What were you what?
I'm talking about the shooting that took place last night in Lake City, Florida.
Yes, ma'am, I'm aware of that.
Chief, you would like to speak on that?
Yes, we are aware. We've been talking to several entities, spoke with the mayor, city manager. Also, we've been having several meetings with Councilman Hill about the issues that's been going on. Talked to several residents today. Also talked with the sheriff today. We're trying to collaborate on what's the best how to handle this because we are looking for solutions on how to do this. So we do have a meeting set up April 15th at 7:00 p.m. at Pastor Marvelous Church. He invited us to come, and so if you would like to come there, we certainly like to do that. Also, those who are willing to have information, because people are not talking actually as well, but we're trying to come up with a holistic approach to dealing with this. So we would love to have you there. And we talked to several citizens as well today. So April 15th at 7:00 p.m. we will be there. And he personally said, that was Pastor Martin, we're looking for people to come and to offer solutions on how we can handle this. Because I do understand that a lot of the citizens are saying these are not people that are coming from our community, although our community members are being hurt. 3 people were shot this weekend, and that is 3 too many.
Yeah.
And so we solicit your assistance as well. We understand that we have people coming from out of town in our city, and it certainly infuriates us as well that this is happening.
Okay, so
we're looking for
the church is where?
I'm sorry?
Where's the church located at?
Listen, I believe.
Okay.
So what he's doing a flyer with that information, and as a matter of fact, he said that he's ready to walk with him, and we've offered to walk with him as well to get information out about that. So you're absolutely right. The violence, the guns, all that are happening in our community, and we're doing everything that we can. There are more people out there than we were. This weekend. So we just did, and we're been working on it all day pretty much.
Okay.
Chief, that time is 7 what?
All right, thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Chief. That's all I have that were signed up to speak at this time. Anybody else in the audience? Manny, do you have anybody on? Okay. All right, we'll move along. The next item under old business, and the reason I put it under old business, one, I want to move it up on the calendar or on the docket, but I also wanted to get it early on so we'd get it passed. And one thing that I want to be very strong going forward is that we're not walking things on at the last minute, taking action on things at the last minute and not having them in writing. So that's something going forward I really want to emphasize. And I think that's a lot of what's going on with us and county and different ones is I think we're reacting faster than we're actually getting the information we all need. So I hope we all kind of slow down and start doing it. Now, I've asked the city manager, and he went and got Ms. Sykes to give a recollection of the motions from the August the 10th, 2020 meetings. And there was 3 motions by Mr. Green that were taken by the council and all was in favor of, and they were basically to have him go out and research all this information about the monument, about where we could locate it, and then to have a quick claim if we needed it. And that was kind of, it was more of a, let's get started, let's find out what we can and can't do, because we didn't know really the history of the monument and why it was there and how it got there and what restrictions there were. During that time, a couple of our local historians brought up the fact that they thought we didn't own it. So instead of taking action on something as significant as this, we decided to find out, and this took us this long, but we have finally got a legal opinion of who owns the park, and we're doing it the right way, and that's one thing we have done right. So we found out that the county does own the park, and that was at the end of the last meeting. Since the last meeting, the county's met last Thursday, but we haven't had a meeting, so I have not made any public comments. That's why I wanted to do it at this meeting. And I don't want the council to take any formal action because legally I don't think we can. Mr. Caroline, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we can revisit what we've already done and just, but it hadn't been on the agenda. And, but I just kind of want the council by consensus to just reaffirm what we agreed to back in August. Mr. Sampson wasn't on the council at that time, but I think he's aware of those motions and all. And so we're not actually making, but I am very much in favor of the city having the park. We've maintained it, we've decorated it, we've done everything. And I think going forward, we'll do what we need to do. We rented it out. It's a big part of the downtown area. So I am very much in favor of what we did back in August. And I just like if any of the other councils have any different opinions or if they're in consensus to get that message back to the county.
Well, Mayor, I agree with you. Like I said, the city, far as I can remember, have decorated the park, done Christmas in the park, have had different events. So I think it's no more than right for the city to continue with the park.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I agree with the comments from Mr. Hill in reference to the park. I moved here in 1981, and I always thought that the park belonged to the city because of the investments that the city has made in the park and the maintenance of the park. I just thought that it always belonged to the city, and it is connected to the city. It is in our downtown area. And I think it would be no more than right for us to continue maintaining that park as far and to own the park legally. I was kind of a surprise when the outcome of the ownership search came and revealed that we did not own it after all these years. But to make a long story short, I feel that the city should maintain ownership of it.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I agree. I think the city has maintained the park. We spent tons of money on the park. I think the reason this has become a bigger issue is not anything to do with the park. It's because of what's in the park. And to me, I think we need to look beyond that. We need to say this park is the city's park. We own the park, and we need to make in no uncertain terms to let the county commission know we want the park. And beyond that, if they don't want to give us the park, we should possibly direct council to see what goes into being paid back for our investment into the park, because we have quite a bit of investment. And so the first thing I think is we ask them to deed us the park. And a quick claim deed's nice, but a warranty deed would be better.
Okay. All right.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
Couple of thoughts. First thought that I have is we've already asked the county commissioners to quit claim deed the park to us. And they were so certain that they didn't own it, that they didn't take up the vote. And yeah, I watched the meeting where they voted at their last meeting to once again not quit claim the park. So they've held 2 votes, actually not giving us the park. So we can want it, and we can all feel like the city owns the park, and we think we own the park. And Mr. Jefferson mentioned moving here in 1981. I was born here in 1973. I've always thought the park was the city's as well. We were all wrong, you know, and so now that we know that we were wrong about that, there are some issues with the park that we need to think about. And so when you're thinking about the monument, and anybody that has read my ordinances or my proposals rather, know that number one, I'm in favor of moving the monument. I'm in favor of protecting the monument. I think it should be moved, and I think it should be protected for those people who the monument is important to. And some of them, some of those family members are probably here today and live in our community every day. And so I think they deserve respect, and whatever we do, we need to make sure that we do that. But there is a liability now that the city taxpayers, it's not just a matter of who owns the park, but who is liable, because I promise you, when something comes up with the monument, there is the potential for lawsuits and liability. And we're asking, if we take this park, and not that the county's even offered to give it to us, quite frankly, I want to be clear about that, but even if we do, that 12,000 taxpayers are gonna have to foot the bill for whatever the legal costs are moving forward, as opposed to 50,000 county taxpayers. So there is a cost that's involved now that we didn't know before, right? I didn't hear anyone on the county commission talk about cost sharing or reimbursing for the research of the property that we did. I think that's important, right? It's their part. And I think there should be some cost sharing involved with that. I didn't hear any discussion from the county commissioners about the cost of moving a monument should the city take the park back. There will be a cost for that. And that monument and that park, we now know belongs to the county. So if the city wants to maintain the property and maintain the park, and it's important for us to know going forward what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. And I think that having the answers to those questions, one of the things that I heard when I watched the video of the county commissioners, they were concerned about someone destroying the monument. They said, if we quit claim deed the park to the city, we want to put in a provision that they can't destroy the monument. Well, no one was talking about destroying the monument. Quite the opposite. We're talking about protecting it, preserving it for history and for future generations to study and learn from. So no one on this council, or when Ms. Moses was on the council, talked about destroying that monument. And so the city would never do that, number one. But I do think that if the city is going to ask for that park a third time, we're going to ask a third time from the county commissioners, then what we also need to ask for is the funds to handle the monument that we know is going to follow the transfer of ownership of the park. And so that would include some reimbursement and cost sharing on the property search. It would include some reimbursement and cost sharing on cost of moving the monument, if that's what this council decides to do. Just my thoughts.
I'd like to ask Mr. Helfenberger if he would attend the next county commission meeting and be there to represent the city if he would.
Sure.
All right. So that's the consensus of the council as to those motions, and we're not taking any positive action. Okay, next we're to open a public hearing on City Council Ordinance 2020-2176. Mr. Caroline, would you read that by title?
An ordinance of the city of Lake City, Florida pursuant to petition number ANX 20-02 relating to voluntary annexation, making findings, annexing certain real property located in Columbia County, Florida, which is reasonably compact and contiguous to the boundaries of the city of Lake City, Florida, into the boundaries of the city of Lake City, Florida, providing severability, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and providing an effective date period.
Okay, does anybody wish to speak for or against this ordinance? Nobody online. Okay, if there's nobody, we'll close the public hearing, move into adoption of City Council Ordinance 2020-2176.
Mr. Mayor, I'd move for the adoption of City Council Ordinance number 2020-2176.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Any discussion by council? Ms. Ox, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Sampson,
Yes.
Mr. Jefferson, Mr. Hill,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Mayor Witt.
Yes. Next, we have a open a public hearing on City Council Ordinance 2121-2181 on final reading. Mr. Caroline, would you read that by title?
An ordinance of the city of Lake City, Florida, amending the text of the city of Lake City land development regulations as amended pursuant to an application LDR 21-01 by the city council, providing for amending section 10.11 entitled Approval of Changes to Landmarks and Landmark Sites by adding 3 categories of projects, routine maintenance, minor work, and major work, for the purpose of determining if approval is required by the Land Development Administrator or the Historic Preservation Agency, and by adding design guidelines, providing severability, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and providing an effective date period.
Anybody wish to speak for or against this ordinance? If not, then we'll close the public hearing and move into adoption of ordinance 2021-2181.
Mr. Mayor, I would move for the adoption of ordinance number 2121-2181.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Any discussion by council? Ms. Oxley, call the roll.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Jefferson,
Yeah.
Mr. Hill,
Yes.
Mr. Sampson,
Yes.
Mayor Whit.
Yes. Okay. We did 76, 81. We need to do 85. So we open a public hearing on city council ordinance number 2021-2185. Mr. Copeland, would you read that by title?
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Lake City, Florida, amending section 102-111 of the City Code of Ordinances, providing for amendments to the utility area or zone within which the connection to certain city utilities may be required, providing for severability, providing for the repeal of conflicts, providing for codification, and providing an effective date period.
Anybody wish to speak for or against this ordinance? All right, we'll close the public hearing, move into adoption of ordinance 2021-2185.
Mr. Mayor, I'd move for adoption of City Council ordinance number 2021-2185. A second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion by council? Ms. Oxley, you call the roll, please.
Mr. Sampson.
Yes.
Mr. Jefferson,
Yes.
Mr. Hill,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Mayor Whit.
Yes. Okay, next is new business. We have ordinances, city council ordinance number 2021-2186 on first reading. Mr. Copeland, would you read that by title?
An ordinance of the City of Lake City, Florida, amending the official zoning atlas of the City of Lake City land development regulations as amended, relating to the rezoning of less than 10 contiguous acres of land pursuant to an application Z 21-01 by the property owners of said acreage, providing for rezoning from commercial general to commercial intensive of certain lands within the corporate limits of the City of Lake City, Florida, providing severability, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and providing an effective date period.
Is there a motion to adopt city council ordinance number 2021-2186?
Mr. Mayor, I move for the adoption of ordinance number 2021-2186 on first reading.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Any discussion by council? Ms. Oxley, call the roll.
Mr. Jefferson,
Yes.
Mr. Sampson,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Hill,
Yes.
Mayor Whit.
Yes. Next is city council ordinance number 2021-2187 on first reading. Mr. Copeland, would you read that by title?
An ordinance of the City of Lake City, Florida, amending the official zoning atlas of the City of Lake City land development regulations as amended, relating to the rezoning of less than 10 contiguous acres of land pursuant to an application Z 21-02 by the property owner of said acreage, providing for rezoning from residential single-family 3 to residential office of certain lands within the corporate limits of the City of Lake City, Florida, providing severability, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and providing an effective date period.
Okay, is there a motion as the city council ordinance number 2021-2187?
Mr. Mayor, I move for the adoption of City Council ordinance number 2021-2187. Second.
Been a motion and a second. Any discussion by council? Ms. Oxley, call the roll.
Mr. Sampson,
Yes.
Mr. Jefferson,
Yes.
Mr. Hill,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Mayor Whit.
Yes, next city council ordinance number 2021-2189 on first reading. Mr. Copeland, would you read that by title?
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Lake City, Florida, establishing a temporary moratorium for 180 days related to the issuance of new business tax receipts that are related to activities that include electronic simulated gaming promotions or electronic sweepstakes, accepting renewals of existing business tax receipts, providing for penalties, providing for severability, providing for conflicts, and providing an effective date period.
Is there a motion as the city council ordinance number 2021-2189?
Mr. Mayor, I move for approval of ordinance number 2021-2189 on its first reading.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
a couple of questions. So this is a moratorium for 180 days. My question is, why we're moving forward in a temporary fashion concerning the internet cafes and not doing something more permanent. And I don't know if maybe the city manager could speak to that. But it seems like for 180 days, it's a great idea. We're kind of kicking the can down the road a little bit. So I didn't know if maybe he had some thoughts he could share with us to help us make a better decision.
We were looking at possibly working with the county to see, we have a lot of pockets of county within the city. And it may be better to have, if we can come to something that we both could live with, that would be similar or the same ordinance enforcement on these electronic sweepstakes machines, because it may get pretty confusing the way we have so many enclaves within the city.
No, sir, I didn't.
Mr. Mayor. One thing I think we should keep in mind is the possibility of revenue production here as well. It could be that under a limited amount, if you charge enough, there could be revenue to offset some of the poor decisions we've made in the past, such as the large rent payment we pay every month. And by doing so in a way that limits, so we don't have 50 of them popped up, maybe we could do 12 or 13, and we can make that fee high enough that it could be quite a bit monthly. But it's something I think in this 180 days we should review and just see if there's an opportunity. Because one thing is there's a customer base, that's for sure. The second thing is if it's possible that we could do something to increase revenue, we should look into it, especially if we could do it on a limited basis. That's my thoughts.
Okay, anybody else? Ms. Sykes, you call the roll, please.
Mr. Jefferson,
Yes.
Mr. Hill,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Yes,
Mr. Sampson,
Yes.
Mayor Whit.
Yes. Okay, next we'll move into resolutions. The first one is City Council Resolution 2021-044. Mr. Carolina, would you read that by title?
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Lake City, Florida, authorizing the execution of Task Assignment 13 with Passero Associates LLC for professional services related to the pavement rehabilitation of Runway 523 project at a cost not to exceed $106,870.00.
Okay, is there a motion as the City Council Resolution 2021-044?
Mr. Mayor, I would move for the adoption of resolution 2021-044.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Any discussion? Ms. Sykes, you call the roll, please.
Mr. Green,
Yes,
Mr. Sampson,
Yes.
Mr. Jefferson,
Yes.
Mr. Hill,
Yes.
Mayor Whit.
Yes. Next, City Council Resolution 2021-045. Mr. Carolina, would you read that by title?
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Lake City, Florida, authorizing the execution of an agreement with Mechanical Services of Central Florida Incorporated, doing business as MCOR Services MSI Certified Air Contractors for the preventative maintenance and general and emergency repairs to restore the operation of HVAC systems, period.
Is there a motion as City Council Resolution 2021-045?
Mr. Mayor, I move for the approval of resolution number 2021-045.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Any discussion? Ms. Sykes, will you call the roll?
Mr. Jefferson,
Yes.
Mr. Hill,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
yes,
Mr. Sampson,
Yes.
Mayor Whit.
Yes. Next is City Council Resolution number 2021-046. Mr. Carolina, would you read this by title?
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Lake City, Florida, authorizing task assignment number 4 to the continuing contract with Midtower and Associates Incorporated, a Florida corporation, for engineering services associated with the rehabilitation of the St. Margaret's wastewater treatment facility at a cost not to exceed $168,136.00. Period.
Was there a motion as City Council Resolution number 2021-046?
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to adopt City Council Resolution number 2021-046.
second,
Been a motion and a second. Any discussion? Ms. Sykes, will you call the roll?
Mr. Sampson,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
yes,
Mr. Jefferson,
Yes.
Mr. Hill,
Yes.
Mayor Whit.
Yes. Next is City Council Resolution 2021-047. Mr. Carolina, would you read that by title?
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Lake City, Florida, authorizing the execution of a memorandum of agreement with law enforcement agencies in northern Florida to facilitate the Gateway Initiative, North Florida high-intensity drug trafficking areas, and pursue investigations of drug trafficking organizations and individuals responsible for the importation or distribution of drugs in Columbia County, Florida, providing for severability, providing for conflicts, and providing an effective date, period.
Is there a motion of the City Council Resolution 2021-047?
Mr. Mayor, I move for the approval of resolution number 2021-047.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Any discussion? Ms. Oxley, call the roll.
Mr. Jefferson.
Yes.
Mr. Green.
Yes.
Mr. Hill.
Yes.
Mr. Sampson.
Yes.
Mayor Witt.
Yes. Next, the City Council Resolution number 2021-050. Caroline, read that by title.
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Lake City, Florida, authorizing the execution of a contract with the Florida Department of Corrections for the use of inmate labor and services through inmate work squads, period.
Is there a motion of the City Council Resolution 2021-050?
Mr. Mayor, I move for the approval of resolution number 2021-050.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Any comment?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Go ahead, Mr. Hill.
Thomas, so this means that we, not gonna have any more inmates?
No, this is-
Oh.
No, this is going into a contract before, just renewing the contract for our second squad. But I got the news from the state, Tallahassee is pulling all inmate crews from all agencies starting Friday. So Mr. Heffenberger and myself is trying to figure out another plan. The county's working on a plan. Also, what I've been told of trying to go get them ourselves, like I used to do 25 years ago. So we're fixing to lose them. But we're working on a plan. But this is just a contract to redo for the second crew.
Mr. Mayor, my question was going to be with now that we've had COVID for a year, I know it's been a struggle getting those work crews for the last year. Has that increased? Has that gotten easier? Are we still able to get them? Are we not able to get them?
Well, since all the COVID, when they were pulled back from us, it was rough. But they finally started coming back out. But due to employment throughout all of us, that we're all having issues, that's why they're pulling the outside ground crew guards back to the prison to have their numbers up in employment. So that's why they're making this decision, because they can't get people to work.
And maybe refresh my, what was our cost savings when we were doing the inmate crews versus hiring full-time positions?
For us to have two squads, it's $112,000 and something, so it's around 113,000. I can't hire 4 employees for that price, and I'm getting 12 for that price.
So do you think that they would allow you to check them out?
Yes, sir. We've already talked to the warden, and he's already confirmed with Tallahassee. There will be some training that we'll have to do, like I did a long time ago. But we're looking at possibly, well, at a later date, come back to the council and move my funds from my contractual service back to my operating of that $113,000 roughly, back into that account where we can hire 2 people, a retired officer or somebody from the prison system that's already inside, that knows all the ins and outs. And then we can, make the transition easy for the prison and us to go out there and get inmates. So that's what we're looking at.
All right, thank you very much. Keep us posted. Okay, Ms. Sykes, you call the roll?
Mr. Jefferson.
Yes.
Mr. Sampson.
Yes.
Mr. Hill.
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Mayor Witt.
Yes. Okay, next, the city council resolution 2021-051. Mr. Carolina, read that by title.
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Lake City, Florida, ratifying the mayor's extension of the state of emergency arising from the COVID-19 public health emergency, period.
Is there a motion of the city council resolution 2021-051?
Mr. Mayor, I move for the adoption of resolution number 2021-051. Oh, I'm sorry.
That's right.
wrong number.
That's right.
That's right.
It's right. Okay.
Second.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I think last month or the month before, I'd mentioned somewhat getting, trying for us to get back into our own building and kind of get back to normal. I know that we're having to have IT staff every meeting that we're doing with Zoom. And so I know that Florida's opened up. I think we've COVID vaccinations now are accessible. I know 40 and above. I think I'm not certain if we've gone to 16 and above yet. I know that that's coming. If we didn't do it this week, I think it's coming here pretty quick. So other than meeting in this building, are there still concerns of why we would continue with the emergency meeting, or I mean, the emergency declaration and not move back? Are there other benefits that the city's receiving?
I know that usually when there's things like this, declaring a state of emergency gives us benefits. I know during storms, you don't qualify for certain aid or things if you don't. And probably some of this COVID money probably is tied to that. Is that correct?
I would want to check out the COVID funding eligibility before I could research that, come back to the next meeting with it.
Super. I definitely, just to be clear, Mr. Mayor, I fully support the resolution with the COVID-19 public health emergency. I just, I know that we need to start making the transition back to normality. You know, it's healthy for our community to do that when it's safe. And so, of course, I'm not the individual that determines that. I just want us to be having that discussion. I think we need to, as I look out in the audience, you know, some folks are wearing masks, many aren't. As many folks on our council are and are not. So, you know, I just want to, if we can be back to normal, I would like us to be back to normal.
And it may be two different issues. We may have to still do the declaration of the emergency just for those benefits, but I don't think it restricts us from starting back toward that. So
Yes.
we can look into it, and this is 1st of April. Maybe we can start getting back that way. I agree with you. I'd like to get back in our old chambers. Ms. Sykes, will you call the roll?
Mr. Jefferson,
Yeah.
Mr. Hill,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Sampson,
Yes.
Mayor Witt.
Yes. Next is City Council Resolution 2021-052. Mr. Carolina, would you read that by title?
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Lake City, Florida, authorizing the city to enter into an agreement with the State of Florida Department of Transportation related to utility work to be performed on US Highway 90 from Shana Way to Bay Avenue, agreeing to pay the State of Florida Department of Transportation a cost not to exceed $12,210.00 for the utility work and establishing an effective date, period.
Is there a motion on the City Council Resolution 2021-052?
Mr. Mayor, I would move for the adoption of City Council Resolution 2021-052.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Ms. Sykes, will you call the roll?
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Sampson,
Yes.
Mr. Jefferson,
Yes.
Mr. Hill,
Yes.
Mayor Witt.
Yes. Okay, item 17, City Council Resolution 2021-053. Mr. Carolina, would you read that by title?
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Lake City, Florida, authorizing the execution of a commercial contract with Millennium Bank, a foreign profit corporation, for the purchase of both real and personal property, authorizing the costs associated with title and closing procedures, authorizing a purchase price not to exceed $1,100,000.00, period.
Is there a motion on the city council resolution 2021-053?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to adopt city council resolution number 2021-053.
Second.
Got a motion and a second, and before we have any further discussion, Mr. Chase Moses is here in the audience. If anybody has questions of him, and he wanted me to recognize that. So if anybody has any, he's here. If not, we'll move forward. Any comments to council?
Mr. Mayor, I have a comment not for Mr. Moses. With the purchase of the property for the 1,100,000, I know on item number 25, Mr. Helpenberger is going to speak tonight to referral to Community Redevelopment Advisory Committee for some potential items. And I believe when we approved this purchase of the bank properties, kind of tied to that was the building of City Hall on the Lakeshore Hospital Authority property. And my understanding is we had a shortfall. And so I thought that the shortfall could be made up with CRA funds. And so I just want to, before I fully support this, and I do, I just want to ask Mr. Helpenberger if I was correct or incorrect in that assumption of our shortfall and CRA funds to make up that gap.
There will be a shortfall. We can use some of the CRA funds for maybe some of the site work, but not towards the building. But as far as those items like the skate park and the track and workout stations, what I would propose there is going after a FERDAP grant of $200,000 with no local match. And that would fund those two projects. And you would not need to use CRA funds for those two projects.
I understand. So the CRA funds then would still be available for the City Hall project.
Correct.
Okay.
All right, Ms. Ashby, call the roll, please.
Mr. Sampson,
Yes.
Mr. Hill,
Yes.
Mr. Jefferson.
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Mayor Witt.
Yes. Okay, next we have City Council Resolution 2021-054. Mr. Coberline, would you read that by title?
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Lake City, Florida, supplementing City Council Resolution number 2019-156, authorizing the supplementation of the application of proceeds received from the sale of the Series 2019 bond to be appropriated to the City Hall portion of the project, providing certain other covenants and agreements in connection therewith, and providing an effective date, period.
Is there a motion of the City Council Resolution 2021-054?
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion of city council to adopt city council resolution number 2021-054. Second.
Been a motion and a second. Any discussion? Ms. Sox, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Sampson,
Yes.
Mr. Jefferson.
Yes.
Mr. Hill,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Mayor Witt.
Yes. Next is City Council Resolution number 2021-055. Mr. Coberline, would you read that by title?
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Lake City, Florida, accepting a utility easement from Ashman Holdings LLC for the purpose of extending a water main and enabling future utility system improvements, period.
Is there a motion on the City Council Resolution 2021-055?
Mr. Mayor, I move for adoption of resolution number 2021-055. Second.
Been a motion and a second. Any discussion? Ms. Sox, will you call the roll?
Mr. Jefferson,
Yes.
Mr. Sampson,
Yes.
Mr. Hill,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Mayor Witt.
Yes. Next, City Council Resolution 2021-056. Mr. Coberline, would you read this by title?
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Lake City, Florida, retiring K-9 Max from the Lake City Police Department and authorizing the adoption of K-9 Max to former police officer Ryan Collins, relinquishing any and all liability for the housing, care, veterinary needs, and food related to K-9 Max, and establishing an effective date, period.
Is there a motion of the City Council Resolution 2021-056?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to adopt city council resolution number 2021-056.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
With the retirement of the K-9, I just want to ask how many K-9 officers the city still has available? Are there openings? Are we looking to acquire more canine officers? And how we could support them in doing so?
Thank you, Councilman. That is a good question. We have two now, and we, can you hear me? Yes? Let me just hold it. There you go. All right, we do have two, but we would like to get an additional one so that we can have a K9 on all shifts, and also with our specialized unit as well. So that would be helpful to get another.
And Chief, I know that you have sought funding in the past for the canine officers. Is there anything in the pipeline? Or we're just gonna be down to two until the city, how does that process go? Are we gonna be down to two canine officers for the foreseeable future?
Yes, unless we're able to get additional funds to purchase another.
And what is the cost of that, Chief?
It can range from 5,000, 6,000 to a person who would donate a dog, a K9 to us. And that's what happened with Max. We had a citizen to donate that, but usually if we're gonna get a good breed, a good one that's trainable, it costs about 6,000 at the most. or more.
Thank you.
So Chief, for that cost, he is not pre-trained, ready trained. He's trained after we receive it.
Well, there is a possibility. There are companies that have K9s that are trained and ready to go. And it's interesting that you asked that because I was just talking to staff about that. If we can look into that possibility of looking into those organizations that already have K9s that are trained for police work, that would be great. But if they're not, we've been doing very well with the company we've been using for the training. But I would like to try that. Yes.
Thank you, Chief. Ms. Ashley, call the roll.
Mr. Sampson,
Yes.
Mr. Hill,
Yes.
Mr. Jefferson,
Yeah.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Mayor Witt.
Yes. Next, the City Council Resolution 2021-057. Caroline, would you read that by title?
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Lake City, Florida, amending section 2-48 of the city code, establishing committee meetings of the special standing committees, repealing all resolutions in conflict, and providing an effective date period.
Is there a motion as the City Council Resolution 2021-057?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to adopt City Council Resolution number 2021-057.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Ms. Ashley, call the roll.
Mr. Sampson,
Yes.
Mr. Hill,
Yes.
Mr. Jefferson,
Yeah.
Mr. Green,
No.
Mayor Witt.
Yes. Next, we're moving to Departmental Administration, discuss the possible action, affordable housing, staff analysis reports on 12 properties. I have one request to speak before this, and it's from Hope Crawford. Okay. Yes. Okay,
Dave Young, Growth Management Department. I brought this back to you, the report to council after the last meeting that we had. And you requested some changes, and which I have furnished along with staff analysis of the properties. There's 12 properties in total. I believe there's 2 of them that are too small to do anything with. The rest of them are of a size that can be used. And upon the request from City Council, we have reviewed them, each one, and we have come up with the determination that they, due to the shortage of affordable housing within the city of Lake City, staff recommends this property be sold with the restriction that the property be developed for permanent affordable housing and that it be sold through gov.deals with advertisement by pending sale, and auction in newspaper and City of Lake City website. All the properties will have to be surveyed and appraised prior to the property being sold. And we have each one of them listed in there. I have also given you a packet on this showing the property appraisers and the site for each one of those properties, and they're in the order that they are on the packet that you were given.
Okay. Anybody have any questions from council of Mr. Young at this time?
I'll wait until public comment on this
Okay.
issue. So
Do you want to speak now?
I'm asking that y'all strike the stipulation to only sell to somebody that's gonna do affordable housing. One of the parcels had been in our family for over 40 years. However, in 2014, circumstances arose and that property came to the attention of code enforcement. And at that time, the property owner was assessed a fine of $100 a day due to code violations. And when you add that up, that's $3,000 a month, plus the cost to fix the code violations and bring them up to par. The owner was in his 80s. He didn't make enough in Social Security to pay the fine, much less pay to have the property fixed. The following year, his fines had gone up to $43,400, which was more than he originally built the house for. He died prior to this being settled, and the city ended up with the property. Earlier this year, I believe y'all voted in favor of a lien amnesty. Had he been given that a few years ago, I wouldn't be here. And I'm not asking for special treatment. I just want y'all to put it out where anybody can bid on it and not have to do affordable housing on it.
Mr. Mayor, so I agree with the sentiments of the last speaker. I think for us, I love the idea of putting the properties on Gov Deals. It's open. There's not a minimum. I know previous conversations that we've had in the previous 2 years, we talked about many of these properties. We're concerned that a developer wouldn't even want to move into those. And so I wouldn't want to restrict a developer who wants to develop that property at all. And so I think if we put it on without a minimum bid on Gov Deals, and any funds that the city collects, those funds could then be used for affordable housing. But those properties would then belong to the people who purchase those properties. And they could do with them as they wish, as long as they keep them, of course, in compliance with codes. So the motion that I would make, and I can hold off if others want to speak to it, is that we put these properties for sale on the Gov Deals website, and then we use any funds that we get from those properties. We allocate those funds specifically to affordable housing, but not those particular properties to affordable housing. Does that make sense?
Is there a second?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I think that's a good idea because I bought several things on Gov Deals over the years. I think you'll see the bids will be higher without the restriction. You're going to see people like the family member that wants to bid on the property that'll drive the price up. And I think what we should be looking at is what's our biggest effect for affordable housing? Is it holding that particular lot to have an affordable house, or getting as much as we can so we can fund either repairs or some kind of program? So I'm in agreement with what Mr. Green's saying on
So
that.
is that a second?
I'd second that motion.
Okay, comments, I do want to thank staff for doing a good job with this. I think they did a good job of organizing it and presenting it to us and doing what we asked them to do as far as whether it was available for affordable housing as they did. Some of it's too small, and some of it is suitable and all. But I kind of agree too that if we get better bids, maybe we could put that money towards some projects, but it's still good affordable housing.
Mr. Mayor, I have one more question for Mr. Young. Mr. Young, on the items that were too small, is there a possibility that we could seek out adjacent property owners to see? I mean, I know of several examples of items within the city where you have something that's, who knows why it's there and the size of it. But what is it in the city's benefit? If we can attach it to something, sell it off in some way to get some kind of tax return on it, or revenue on it.
We have two parcels on Hernando. One's too small to build on, and the other one is fairly large. They could be sold together and make a larger unit.
Would the one smaller one qualify under the new rules for tiny houses that we're looking into doing?
Yes, sir, if we can, get that before the, city council and get that passed, then we could be doing what's called, the tiny homes.
Now, you mentioned the neighboring parcel with that parcel would be buildable.
Yes, sir.
Is there another way to split that where you could get multiple places instead of having a smaller lot that's
Yes,
unusable?
you could split that, you could combine them and split them in two. It would take a replat because that is in a platted subdivision.
What's the cost of a replat?
Our advertising cost is $750. The replat is probably gonna cost around $1,500 for the surveyor to do all the work.
But that could be passed on to an end user. So that could be packaged and sold as one parcel,
Yes, sir.
since we're not going to restrict it to the type of houses.
Yes.
I'd recommend that we go ahead and package that as one piece and sell it to you.
Would we be able to put that parcel, I didn't mean to step on you, Mr. Sampson. Would we be able to put that parcel up for sale on GovDeals, those two parcels combined prior to the replat or no?
Yes, sir. We could put them both up for sale on, Gov, on the Gov site.
Knowing that the city would incur the cost to make sure that that property is a usable piece of property.
And what we could even do on that one, we could put a reserve on it if we need to hit a certain amount to cover our cost on it.
Yeah.
And that way it's the quickest to get it out into the community to get it redeveloped. Since we're taking so long to get affordable houses, the tiny houses done.
So separate from those properties, I do think it's imperative that the other properties not have a reserve because they may be properties, where maybe the interest wouldn't meet a reserve. And so we want to make sure that those properties are still available if someone maybe couldn't meet the reserve, but still has the intentions, lower the risk for them. So, yeah.
I would request one thing, that we do have a reserve to cover the cost of the surveying and the appraisal on the property that we will have to do.
That brings up another question. A lot of times when you bid on these parcels on GovDeals, there's no advanced survey on it. It's buyer beware. I think that would save us quite a bit of money because when you look at them now, of course, the property appraiser is only as good as what it is. There are mistakes.
Like a park.
Exactly. But if you leave it to buyer beware, that's going to save us quite a bit of money. Now, as far as appraisal, is there a reason we're getting appraisal on something that's going to go fully to market and be opened up as an zero bid to start? Because if I bid $1, I don't care if it appraises for $10 million if I bid get it for $1.
That's entirely up to.
So I would
city
say, in my opinion, I would waive the appraisal and the survey, put it up as is, save the money for the city, and let's try and maximize the bid.
I agree 100%.
All right, anything else? And I think we had a motion in a second. Ms. Sykes, you call the roll, please.
Can we make sure that we're clear on the motion because there's been a lot discussed and a lot added and taken away?
Okay,
Yep.
I could do that.
Ms. Sykes, excuse me, the motion is that the houses, the properties that are listed, the 12 properties are put up on GovDeals without a reserve. And any funds collected from the GovDeals would then be set aside in an affordable housing account to be used at a future date.
Does the motion also include to combine those two smaller properties?
Correct, that those two properties that individually would not be large enough would also be placed together as one unit.
Now, would we put a a minimum on those since we would have to do the replat on those?
So there would be a minimum to cover the city's
Okay.
cost on the replat
Okay.
on that, only on those
On that
properties.
one? Okay. Okay, I just want to make sure I was clear. We just talked about.
And
an awful
waiving the
lot.
survey and appraisal, right?
Waiving the survey and appraisal.
Okay.
Alright.
I think we're clear as mud now.
You got that?
I think so. I have a motion, but I don't have a second.
Second,
Yeah, Mr. Sampson had seconded.
Okay. Mr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Sampson,
yes.
Mr. Jefferson,
Yes.
Mr. Hill,
Yes.
Mayor Witt.
I hope that you get that. There won't be a restriction on it. Okay. Next is item 23, discussion possible action Northeast Florida League of City Board of Directors. They give Northeast Florida League of Cities members the opportunity to choose 2 nonprofits. Hill, you wanna?
Yes, we had a meeting back in January, and we discussed giving 2 nonprofit organizations a donation. I have one here, and the second one I would like to someone on our council, if they know someone that they would like to nominate for this donation. The one that I have is for Mr. Tamez Ruiz. His organization is The Gifted One. And what he does, I guess he works with gifted kids. He's a young man he's doing well with his organization. So I told him about it and told him to give me the information, and he did that, and I got his information here. He's also a nonprofit.
Okay. Anybody else have any suggestions?
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
I would certainly defer to Mr. Hill. I know if Mr. Hill has an organization that he has chosen that's a youth organization, I would go to the other end of the spectrum, and I would suggest Columbia County Senior Services. So what that would do is that would cover us on both ends of the spectrum for the youth and for our seniors. I know that they do such great work over there with their meals and their respite care and in-home services. So it's just a suggestion for thought.
Okay.
So we have our 2 organizations that we like to donate money to.
So you can make that motion?
Yes, I'd like to make the motion to the Gifted One Corporation and
Columbia County Senior Services.
Columbia County Senior Services.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Ms. Soccer, call the roll, please.
Mr. Hill,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Jefferson,
Yes.
Mr. Sampson,
Yes.
Mayor Witt.
Yes. Okay, now to item 24, discussion possible action utility advisory committee composition, Mr. Jefferson.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I placed that there because, well, to me, there been some confusion about the intent of this council on who should be the composition of that utility advisory committee. This has went back and forth several times and has been before the council several times, and for various reasons, it has been sidetracked or amended and brought back to the council. And the last time, our last meeting, resolution number 2021-049, I believe it was presented before the council. And we passed it or voted on it. But unbeknown to me, after the meeting, I determined that it was determined to me that the intent, that I felt that the intent of the council was not included on the as the composition there. And fast forwarding, the mayor is not listed as a member of this committee. And the mayor has been a member of the utility committee committee in the past for years. A committee of this importance, I have strong feelings that the mayor should be included on this committee. He represents the entire city, and value his input, and I think he would have some valuable input in this committee. I don't know that it was a misstep or whether it was intentional that the mayor was left off in this committee. But I'd like to bring it back to the council again and ask us to reconsider the mayor being on as a member of this committee, as well as Mr. Daniel Crabb as a realtor and developer. And if there's oppositions, I mean, I would like for it to be made known to the full council here why the mayor cannot serve, should not serve on the utility advisory committee.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I'd like to make a comment on that. I think it goes farther into the discussion of having a committee that's equal in number. I'm not against the mayor being on the committee. As a matter of fact, I think he could be on it definitely as it's made now, as long as we're sure that there's 2 city council votes. The concern is, first of all, it's an advisory committee. It's for information back to the council. It's not a decision-making committee. If the mayor were to be added as a non-voting member, or if he wanted to take the place of one of the voting members, I think that would be fine. In addition to that, the same with having a public developer. I think it's an excellent idea to have a developer. As far as that goes, though, if I have one developer and that one developer has an interest in XYZ property and we're talking about ABC, how does that affect the discussion? But I do think input's crucial. I think we should invite the developer again as a non-voting member. I think that would be a fine thing to do, and that way we make sure we're interested in what they have to say, because the input is what's important, and making sure we have all the information at our hands. And I agree, you know, as a non-voting member, that would make the most sense.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
So it is a city utility advisory committee. And obviously, for me, I'm not going to be able to support a committee that includes county commissioners who I think have openly said that they don't wish to work with the city. And that's just my assessment. I do think that the mayor should be on there as a voting member. I probably won't support the resolution as long as it has those county commissioners on there. I do think that having a developer is important. The fact that one is willing to serve, I think, is amazing. And I think it's a shame that this city council has wasted some of his time that he could be devoting to his business. With the discussion, I don't know how much time he spent with Mr. Helfenberger, but it's pretty unprofessional when you have a developer who says, yes, I'm willing to serve and to try to improve the city, and then we do something like not vote for him as we did a couple meetings ago. So for me, just to be clear, I'm not going to support any utility advisory committee that has the county commissioners, regardless of the makeup, unless they're removed. And the city utility advisory committee is made up of city members. So that's the explanation for the way that I would vote on this particular item.
Well, I'm gonna participate in the utility meetings. I did the other day, I did it virtually. I was at the office working, but I had to Zoom on. And I'm doing, and I don't really care to be a voting member because when it comes to council, I'm gonna be voting here. So that's not a big priority to me. But I actually spoke with Mr. Craps and talked with him about it, and also I kind of hate to go back to him again and say, hey, you know, would you serve? I could go to him and say, hey, would you be willing to be a non-voting member if that's the will of the council?
Mr. Mayor, in that vein too, we had another developer had a person at the meeting. They didn't speak this time, but they spoke at past meetings. I think getting that point of view is important. I think we need to make sure he knows it's open. But going back to Mr. Green's point, I think this is the best meeting we've had between the 2 entities that I've been to. We, at our next meeting, are going to bring forward an item which, if we pass it, I believe the county will possibly pass it to split the funding on the master plan, and the master plan is city specific. It's another avenue to increase revenue in our expenses and to cut down. I think there was a lot of things discussed there, and I think it's valuable for anyone on this council to attend and get the information directly from that meeting. As far as changing it, we've only had one meeting in the current makeup. The council can always decide what to do or to change. I think how it is, we should roll forward with it. If we want to add some members, for informational purposes, I think that's good. There's a lot of people that attend for informational purposes. We had an excellent presentation by Steve Brown from the gas department. I think we had excellent presentations from Jamie Bell, although she's not a member, I would consider her crucial. Mike Osborne had excellent input, again, not a member, but still the input was there, and I think it was valued. It seemed like everybody on that committee had something to add that added to the meeting. But I think that's all I have pretty much on that.
All right. So Mr. Jefferson, if you can
Well-
make heads or tails out of all that.
Mr. Mayor, I just feel that if we're gonna be, have a working relationship with the county, and we are going to be doing projects together, in particular, most of our projects involve utility. I feel that it's important that the county be a part of the Utility Advisory Committee. And I understand Mr. Green's position on that, but I'm speaking of my personal feelings. I don't see anything, if we're going to be investing and spending and discussing and doing projects together, I think that we need to have a relationship with them. And then this is a one way of developing that relationship and maintaining that relationship. There's issues, if there's issues to be discussed, they can be brought up there. And whether or not and who's a voting member, it doesn't matter, but information sharing is important. And I just feel strongly, Mayor, you for one, being the mayor of the city, you're gonna get more calls, more so than I am, about what happened in the meeting or what are you doing with this, and that type of thing. And I think you need to be, well advised, well informed. And I think that's one way of knowing what we're talking about and what we're doing in relation to the county and the whole 9 yards. I just feel that it's very important, Mayor, and that was my take on it. But if the council decision is to go, not to include you, well then, so be it. But this will be the last time that I will bring it up before the council in reference to the composition of the membership on that committee.
Okay. All right. Next is potential items to be referred to the Community Redevelopment Advisory Committee. Mr. Warren wanted to speak on 25A and B. Did you want to speak now?
Mr.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
before we leave that topic and go to another, I'd like for it to be clear to the council members here, where did we leave this? As it was, or are we asking for a recommendation? For amendment?
I guess it's where it was last time with just the two council members and what went to the last meeting, unless there's a motion today, but right now, I guess we're still at where we were before with the composition that was at the last utility meeting.
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah.
just for the purposes to clear things up, Mr. Jefferson and what he asked, I would make a motion that we remove the two county commissioners from the committee, add the mayor and Mr. Kratz. I'm sure it's not going to go anywhere on the council, but I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
There you go.
There we go. Any other motions?
I would make a motion that we include the mayor and Mr. Kraft.
Okay, we got a motion. Oh, Lord.
I'd like to be recognized, Mr. Mayor, on those
Okay.
motions. Thank you very much, Your Honor. It's nice that we have a motion here and a motion there tonight, and a motion everywhere.
Mr. Mayor,
If anybody, if anybody.
Wait a
knows-
minute, wait a minute. Hold up.
for the sake of order, a clear meeting, are we in discussion or are we open for public comment?
Well, we.
You have a
we had
motion on the
mo-
floor.
We have a motion, we
on the
haven't
floor.
even had a second yet on it.
Exactly.
We have a motion on the floor.
Am I recognized? If I'm not, you did recognize me. If you
Well,
want
let me just see if we even have a second.
Unrecognize me, that's fine. It's sort of what's going on here.
But there was a point of order, and I guess he's right that there was a motion, but not even a second to the motion.
Correct.
Is there a second to the motion? Nope.
I would like to be recognized anyway.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Your Honor.
Briefly.
I'm going to be very brief. As I said before, we had a motion here, we had a motion there, we had a motion everywhere. The ordinance is clear. And why we don't have the city attorney explaining these ordinances when they come up, or if we have a motion out of left field. The ordinance is clear. The mayor, by resolution, establishes the members of the Utility Advisory Committee. The mayor by resolution. And then the second part of that sentence is what you worked on today, which apparently nobody noticed in the first place anyway. Then the mayor delegates who the chairperson is. Didn't say how. You know, obviously with some stuff going back and forth here, there, and everywhere, the way things have gone on with this utility committee. But clearly it's the purview of the mayor to delegate who the chairperson is. You can do it by an email, do it by carrier pigeon. It doesn't make a difference. It doesn't say. But in order to change the makeup of the Utility Advisory Committee, and maybe somebody needs to correct me if I'm wrong, this city council passed an ordinance. And the ordinance says that the mayor, by resolution, says who appoints who's on that committee, and then it gets approved by the city council. So Mr. Jefferson coming up here and making a resolution, making a motion tonight that he wants to change it. Maybe that's fine for informational purposes, but in the civilized world of Lake City and law and order, and we do work by rules, Mr. Jefferson was totally out of line. And that conversation should have been stopped. If he wants to sit here and have a chit chat, that's fine. But he has no authority to make a motion to change what's been going on for 2 months now. And you know what I take offense to is we have a city attorney. I don't know who's the parliamentarian on this city council, but somebody should have noticed that. And I thank you for your courtesy, Mr. Mayor.
right.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
may I address
Sure.
him a question really? Are you saying then that, Mr. Lickle, are you saying then that this council does not have the authority to address a resolution or a ordinance? If they feel that they can improve that ordinance, we cannot address it. Is that what you're saying?
Mr. Jefferson, what I'm saying is there's a time and a place for everything. And the city council has made rules that it's supposed to follow. That an ordinance gets read, that an ordinance is presented one time and read by title. Why there is not a public hearing on the first time this is read. Mr. Copeland came up with the new legal term, clean reading, which I couldn't find anywhere. That's the time it gets discussed. And it gets discussed the second time. And then you have to follow the rules. So what I'm suggesting, Mr. Jefferson, let me rephrase that. What I'm saying is, you are Lake City. You're elected to represent Lake City. You can discuss this stuff anytime you want. But you can't change it tonight. You can't make a motion to change it because the mayor would have had to come with a resolution and it would have had to been on the agenda and then you could discuss it. And that happened somewhere around 3 times in the last 2 months. And apparently you found that confusing. Call me anytime and I'd be happy to explain it to you, but it's just not fair to bring it up again. I hope I answered your question, Mr. Jefferson.
You didn't exactly, but that's okay. I don't think I'm gonna get the answer. Go ahead,
So,
Nick.
Mr. Mayor, no one wants to see how the sausage is made, but what I would say is, in all seriousness, all jokes aside, what you do see on this city council is healthy debate in public. and it is crystal clear, I think, that we do not all see this issue the same way. And so I think it is good governance that the community sees that, and they see that our discussions really are open, trying to find out what's best for all of our citizens. In this case happens to be utilities, but for all the utility users as well. And so while there is disagreement on the council, there is no disagreement on public discussion of any issue. There is a process and a procedure that's important before we take action. But I appreciate knowing Mr. Jefferson's thoughts, Mr. Sampson's thoughts, Mr. Hill's thoughts, your thoughts. So, you know, I have no issue with anybody sharing their thoughts, even if I disagree with those particular sentiments.
Okay.
So,
All right.
Mayor,
Yes.
I apologize. It is late. Most of what the speaker, Mr. Wilker, said is absolutely correct, especially that part about the mayor designating chairman. Thank you for pointing that out last week and saving us a special meeting. The mayor does not bring the resolution. The mayor brings the recommendation, and then the council may override the mayor with their consent. And that consent is placed into a resolution. I want to make sure that we understand that. For example, if the mayor did bring the resolution, then we wouldn't have the composition we have today because the mayor didn't vote along with other resolutions. So again, in 2-48 sub 1D, appointment by the mayor with the consent and approval by resolution of the city council. So it is just a recommendation. You may be overridden, if you will.
And I want to say, I agree with Mr. Green with that good discussion on this. Very little agreement, but, and the council has gone along with me on most recommendations and all. So I think we're doing all right. But let's move on to item 25 and Mr. Helfenberger.
Okay, I would like to refer a few items to the Community Redevelopment Advisory Committee. The items are a skate park, a track and workout stations. Now those two items could be accomplished and paid for through a FERDAP grant, a state grant with no match for $200,000. That's the way I would fund those sorts of projects because it's ideal for that sort of grant. And we also have a potential plan, and Live Oak has already a skate park plan. And I would like the council to, you know, send this with a favorable recommendation, or that they look at it at the committee level, and then bring it back to have them do all the committee work on it. The other request was for grant funds for renovating property in the historic district. And again, I think at the committee level, they should look at that. And if we go along those lines, we need to develop some policy or guidelines for that sort of thing. And we have a number of buildings in the historic district that could benefit from this, but without any good guidelines for it, you can't have a strong program without that. So, and I think this all starts with the committee. I would strongly urge the council to send these to the Community Redevelopment Agency Advisory Committee.
Okay, I totally agree. It's just something that we should get to the advisory committee to take up and that, and then brought back to.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question. If we're going for a FERDAP for the skate park and the track, what's the thought process for the advisory committee, just to see if it fits into the plan?
There'd be details that would need to be discussed, and you know, as far as you have, there's all kinds of ways to design it. You know, they may recommend looking at a live oaks plan. Maybe they agree with that. Maybe there's a better plan. But there's details to this that need to be worked out at a committee level before it comes back to council.
Mr. Mayor, do we know when this committee meets? Is it on a regular meeting basis or?
We hadn't met because of COVID for a while, but and getting all these appointments, but Mr. Jefferson is the chairman.
Yeah, it would probably be next week. We have a meeting on the agenda for this committee tomorrow.
Okay. So it'd be a week from tomorrow.
Right, I believe there's a 7 day notice.
Not but on the 13th.
On the 13th.
Is it 13th? 13th. Yes, 13th, Tuesday.
Okay, so the meeting for the CRAC would be on Tuesday, April 13th.
Okay,
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry.
go ahead.
So I would have a question too. I'm just a little bit confused. So, the purpose of the CRA would be to make a recommendation about going forward to try to acquire grant funds, or to, authorize expenditures that are already in the account. Because I think, previously when we talked about
Right.
purchasing the property, we said we weren't gonna authorize expenditures because we know we had the city hall fund.
We go after grant funds. It would make a recommendation to go after grant funds. We would have a certain level of detail for that. They would do the homework and we would draw it back to council for the approval to go out for the grant funds.
I guess we'd have to decide again how big a park, what size, where, and all, there's a lot of issues. I guess.
What, and if we're talking specifically about the skate park and, Mr. Mayor, I know, many members on this council have been on here longer than me. I do remember something years back where the city, kind of went down the skate park road before, and I don't know why that didn't come to fruition. I fully support, trying to acquire funds and building a skate park. I think that's great, but, I promise you, I'm not gonna be skating at the skate park, so I would wanna make sure that we have folks who would use those facilities as part of the discussion. You know, the same way, I think, you know, the folks who would use the exercise facilities around Memorial Stadium that's proposed, we need to, you know, try to be inclusive of whoever those stakeholders are. They're not gonna be me in this particular case. So anyway, I would support going after the money and the CRA coming up with a design, but I would want to make sure that the stakeholders who are going to use the facilities have input into any designs that we make.
All right. That's it. Did you want to speak?
Yeah.
Please come up here.
Mr. Mayor,
Okay, well, it'll be coming to the committee next Tuesday, so that's when we'll,
Mr. Mayor,
yeah.
point of order, could Mr. Warren come to the podium? I apologize.
Sylvester Warren, 832 Northeast Richardson Terrace. I guess I got a little sidetracked with the entertainment, and so I lost some of my train of thought. But I think that Councilman Green hit the nail on the head. I think stakeholders should be a part of it.
Sure.
I probably be one of the people that would be at the skate park, and definitely using the track. And so I think that is important that we just don't build anything that people may or may not use. And I try to do some calling and getting some of the other skateboard folks involved to try to come up with a ideal of what they really want to see take place with the skate park.
And I'm sure it's gonna take a few meetings to get it finalized and all, but we need to get people that will use it because they have an idea of what they would like to have.
And we're sure that's going to be on the 12th. Do we have a time yet for the 13th? I'm sorry.
6 o'clock.
I'll fight it for you.
6 p.m.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
I'm sorry.
Mr. Warren,
Yes, sir.
no, you're fine. His point brought up another question for me though. Is there a time frame on the grant to ask for those funds and make the any presentations that we need to make for the grant?
They're typically available once a year. It may be a little bit later in the fall, but you have to have some idea of the design, exactly where you're gonna put it, and make sure you got the stakeholders, all those sorts of things would go inside a strong grant application.
Mr. Green, if you mind, Mr. Mayor, I just want to respond quickly. In the event, do we have an alternative? We're willing to come up with an alternative, because originally when I proposed this to Mr. Heffenberger, he told me that we would be using money from the CRA. And so I was under the impression, and some of the folks in the room that's here as well were under the impression that if the council agreed with it, and I think it's a great idea for the skate park and the track, that we would be using money from the CRA. I don't oppose going after grant money, but in the event that we somehow have some bad luck with the grant, would there be an alternative way to fund it, or would the council be willing to use some of the CRA money to fund it? I think Mr. Henry is here. I think it's not a large cost to do the track nor the skateboard facility.
And the meeting is at 5:30. That was brought to my attention.
I guess I'm just trying to ensure that it'll get done for the community. I'm just trying to ensure that some way financially we'll be able to get the skate park and the track done, if that makes sense.
Again, I can't commit tonight that I do anything, but I would not be opposed to looking at anything to fund it. But I
Okay.
am in favor of a
Yes, sir.
skate park and the track.
All right. Good enough. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say, Mr. Helfenberger is correct. It is once a year that they have these funds available, typically in October. It's important to have multiple community input and multiple community type meetings like this, sending it to this committee, because that will give you more points on your application. They want to know that the community supports the project.
And I thought you were gonna just pay for it.
Sure.
Okay, so let's go into the committee, meet next Tuesday at 5:30. Comments or council?
Yes, Mayor, I won't hold you long. I'll be brief. The chief is supposed to have a workshop. Am I correct?
Correct.
And I had asked that workshop be held at Lake City, at the Richardson Community Center. I talked with Mr. Helfenberg the other day, and he informed me that they didn't have Zoom capability at Richardson Community Center. Now I did some checking today, and I'm gonna ask Mr. Heffenberger if he would check with Richardson, because if the police department is trying to be transparent and want the community to talk to them, I think more people in my district, as well as Mr. Jefferson district, has better access to Richardson Community Center than coming up here. So I don't know what happened, but I would like for him to check on that again.
Okay, sure. Yes, sir.
That's all I have.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, just to that point too, if there's a way that, I think this is gonna take more than one meeting. I think if we could do one that's gonna be on a weekend time, so we could get a larger group of working people or people that want to attend a more convenient time, I would think that would be the case too. And maybe the first meeting's here and then the subsequent meeting could be somewhere else like Richardson or wherever, you know, that it would work. I know one thing about Zoom meetings, I'm going to tell you, the meeting last week at our council chambers, we talked about going back there. Until we can run air conditioning with a microphone, that ain't going to work. Because it was about 200 degrees in there in about 30 minutes.
Where is this at?
At our council chambers.
Oh,
got hot.
Well, I had made, Mr. Carper had reserved a special date at Richardson Community Center. I talked with him today, and he said before if we lost that date, we didn't know when he could get workers back in.
I will call him right away in the morning.
Okay, I want to thank everybody for a long, informative meeting. I think it's been good talk. It's been very well behaved for one of the first times in a while, and I want to thank everybody for that. And I think we got a lot done, and we'll be adjourned. And I want to say it's good to see Mr. Bowser here.